Good evening and welcome to the public meeting for the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, November the 1st, 2017. Wow, November. Where's this year gone? I'd like to welcome everyone, and I'd like to ask that if you have anything that makes noise, if you could please mute it or silence it. And I would like to remind everybody that we're video voice recorded and being live streamed to the web. So you can wave to family and neighbors at home. I'd also like to note that Trustee Daniele is on the phone, and we have regrets from Trustees Metropolansky and Trustee Mansour tonight. And everyone else is in attendance. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Trustee L. Harrison, seconded by Trustee Papin. Is there any discussion of our agenda tonight? Seeing none. Is there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none, I would like to move on. Tonight is usually our Inspire Award presentation.
Chair Amos, we need to vote on the agenda.
Oh, you want to vote on the agenda? You just don't want to have it? Okay, sorry, thank you for the reminder. Okay, all those in favor, since I know I did that. That passed unanimously. Thank you. I guess I assumed it had. Okay, so as I said, we tonight we would normally have our Inspire Awards, but the awards that are being presented tonight, no one is elected to come to the board meeting. I'd just like to remind everyone the Inspire Awards were created to honor people and groups who support the Halton District School Board students and their achievements. The Inspire Awards recipients have been nominated by peers, students, parents, or community organizations. These individuals and our groups are caring, innovative, and creative, and are exemplary in taking initiative to make a positive difference in the lives of our students. So while we're not honoring any in here tonight, we are going to acknowledge the technical services, library services, who will be receiving their awards later in November, and which consists of Jennifer Henshaw, Colleen Riley, Andrea Wilson, Anita Zelenek, and Bianca Conicello. And they will be receiving it, like I said, later in November. So congratulations to all of them. And I would like to remind everyone and out there who are watching that the Inspire Awards are a monthly event, so please send in your nominations for anyone in the system or outside the system that you feel has made an impact and has inspired you, that has helped our students. Thank you. We have no delegations tonight, but we do have a presentation. The first presentation is item 2.3.1. The Burlington PAR implementation update, and Superintendent Blackwell. Welcome. When you're ready.
Can you hear me? Is that good? So thank you. What I'm going to share with you tonight is a quick overview of some of the things that have been happening since our first update. We had a commitment to bring an update to the board bi-monthly. So this is update number 2. First, in terms of the Lester B. Pearson M.M. Robinson Integration Committee, we had our first meeting on October 12th. At that meeting, one of the things that came from the committee was that we really need to let students lead this. And there's a real impetus of the committee to let the students have a voice and really be part of that work. And so I'm excited to share some of that tonight. We came up with some subcommittee draft format. We will be talking about that next week at our committee meeting and then finalizing what that looks like. Following that meeting on November 9th, there will be an opportunity for community members, for parents, for alumni, for students, and for staff to be part of those subcommittees, and we will be providing an opportunity through an expression of interest and communicating that out to families. We also have a leadership team meeting that's upcoming, and that will include leadership of the staff at M.M. Robinson as well as Lester B. Pearson. They will be coming together, and I'm going to share some of the things that are happening. One of the things with M.M. Robinson that's also unique is that we have the Dr. Frank J. Hayden French Immersion Program being phased out, and the students from the Orchard will be coming into M.M. Robinson for French Immersion. So Trustee Collard was able to come to our first meeting as a guest, recognizing that that committee is really about the Lester B. Pearson and M.M. Robinson students that are in the school at Lester B. Pearson and M.M. Robinson right now. But we do know that there are considerations and some great planning that's going ahead to make sure that the Orchard students are involved. And I'm really excited to share some of the things that are happening. If you look at the pictures on the screen, the trustees have a copy of this presentation, and you won't have this picture because this is from today. And these are M.M. Robinson and Lester B. Pearson students coming together to plan activities that are outlined for you on the screen. There are many activities that are happening to welcome the grade 8 students, and the students and staff at both schools are working together to make those opportunities engaging and exciting and really get to know each other. So we're really excited about that work that's happening, and you'll see that there's a fair bit of it over the next little while. A lot of it is around welcoming families. A lot of it is around getting to know each other. The staff is working collaboratively together, and there's a lot of excitement today, as you can see in those photos. With respect to the Aldershot Focus Exploration Committee, it's probably one of the longest names of a committee ever. This committee, we were really excited about and thanks to our communications department, we received over 200 responses in our suggestion box from staff, from students, from parents, from people within our community, from people outside of our community, and we continue to receive great feedback and ideas looking at an innovative concept for Aldershot High School. And we had our first meeting last week. We, as a committee, have an open house planned for November 13th, which is upcoming. You probably received an email today. You probably received a media release today and an invite to attend this event. It is open to anyone and everyone from Halton and beyond. The idea of that evening is really to look at what are the themes that have come forward to date, and then gather input from people, and we may come up with something that's totally different than what has been suggested. So we'll have staff. The format of the evening, as decided by the committee, was to follow a format that was very similar to the park open house, where there was a guide that provided an overview. We're going to provide an overview of the themes that have come forward to date. We're going to have staff available to answer questions on the themes and capture input and feedback from people attending the session. We'll be sharing that information back with the committee. We'll be looking further at exploring the different themes, and we'll also be providing an opportunity for people that aren't able to attend the evening to provide us some feedback in the form of a survey. And give them the same information. And one of the things that one of our committee members, one of our parents who was involved in the initial planning for the park committee open house, said, you know, it would have been great if we had something up front, just a quick overview as to what that event was going to be about and the opportunities that were going to be available. So we recognize that families and people will be able to drop in through 5 to 7. We're going to have 2 quick overview presentations, about 5 minutes in length, one at 5 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock, repeated in a different setting than the actual open house and the stations that will be manned by staff. So that will give people an opportunity to come at any time and also engage in that process. This is a quick overview. I'm not going to read you the slides. It reminds me of high school and elementary school, the 5 W's and the how. This is just an overview as to what that event is going to look like. That information is going to be posted on our website. It's also posted in the news release and also the communication that has gone to our staff and families. One of the things that we did do is we gave people the opportunity when they were submitting a suggestion to provide us their email address, and some of those suggestions did not come from our staff or from any people in our community, so we were able to share that information with them directly as well. The gifted location survey, and again, I just want to clarify that this survey is very much about the location. Are the numbers available in Burlington to look at potentially 2 sites for gifted programming? The survey was sent we had a consultation with SEAC. We've provided the survey in advance. We shared it with our steering committee, sent out the survey. We had approximately 300 responses. The survey has just closed, and that response rate is about 40%. We sent to every family with children identified as gifted in K-12 in Burlington, and the results are pending, so we'll be able to bring an update back probably in the next update. And a reminder that there are no changes to program location prior to 2021, if any. And then just another overview from the steering committee, and the steering committee is comprised of the Burlington trustees as well as many of the superintendents in our departments. We've got some timelines and a development of a plan to share back at the next committee meeting, at the next presentation. It's an overview as for the timing, as what's happening, and really helps our schools and supports our schools in the processes around inventory, staffing, and you can see the other aspects up there. Our Student Services Department, again, there's the work between the schools working on student transitions. We know that that's a very important part of the consolidation. I will be returning to SEAC in December and providing an opportunity for some feedback and some input around those transitions and some guiding work that they have asked to offer some suggestions. The Student Services Department is also working in consultation with the architect, and the program department, again, program consultation and some architect work. The architect, Snyder Architect Incorporated, has toured all of our schools in Burlington, the 4 schools being M.M. Robinson, Lester B. Pearson, Nelson, and Robert Bateman. They were able to get a very good understanding as to the program that's being offered in our schools and have an overview rather than looking just at the blueprints, get to see what those spaces look like for students and for staff. And we've got some upcoming meetings with them. We're hoping to have some options to present to public in the new year. And then we have a communications department who is working tirelessly to send information out, anything around the PAR on top of everything else they do. And they are very responsive, and we've got some new members in that department that we're starting to get a lot of feedback in terms of the Twitter ad and the Facebook ads that have been put out there. We've had a great response rate, and I would credit the over 200 responses to the suggestion box with a lot of the work that the communications department has done. And finally, in terms of planning, the Find My School for next year is updated. So where families put in their address, if they're wondering what school they're going to, it is updated according to the approved recommendations. As well, feeder schools, because we know that parents receive a lot of communication and expect that that communication comes from their school. The grade 8 feeder schools have provided each student with a school-specific letter indicating the program location for September of 2018. And that's probably a quick overview of what we're doing, but we're really excited about the work that's happening, especially between MMR and Pearson at this time, and we know that there are some ongoing discussions already with staff at Nelson and at Robert Bateman as well, in terms of planning ahead, even though those transitions are not for the next year or so. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Is there any comments or questions for Superintendent Blackwell tonight?
I'm hoping that update number 3 will be from students.
That'd be great. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and it sounds like the committee's working well together, and there's some great things happening, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you. All right, so we're now up to approval of the minutes and receipt of our consent agenda items. Can I have a motion to receive the minutes? Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Gerbentz. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I would like the drinking water testing report removed from the consent agenda items because I have a question.
Thank you. Okay, we'll discuss the drinking water before we receive the rest of the report.
You're looking at me?
Yes.
I don't understand.
Okay. Superintendent Cullen, would you like to address Trustee Collard, could you ask your question regarding the report?
Yeah, I found it a little bit confusing when I was reading it. There's a reference at the bottom of the first page of the report to the 2016-17 school year, but then at the bottom of the paragraph it talks about the 2017-18 school year, and the table is from the 2016-17 school year, and I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the 2016-17 school year for these test results. It says there were 120 locations at schools sampled in 2017-18, and I just want to make sure that should say 2016-17.
You are correct. So the 120 samples were actually taken, what we were referring to as last year's round of testing. The 1,200 were this past summer, the most recent one. So you are correct on those dates.
Thank you. And I just wanted to know too, 34 out of 120 sites seems really high. And I'd like to just get a description from you or an explanation from you of how the sampling occurs and what happens when a school fails.
Certainly, through the chair to Trustee Collard. I guess the answer to the results question, we were not really surprised by the exceedances as we see them, because as they go through, we found them in almost any circumstance. There's really no pattern other than if a school has been dormant for a while, and the water sits, we've typically found there's a more likely chance of having a lead exceedance under that circumstance. New school, old school, big school, small school don't seem to have a pattern. But that issue of whether or not the water has been sitting for some period of time. So in some cases, you'll see reference to there was a project done at the school. It's not so much the project that caused the issue. It's the fact there was a project that caused the building to be dormant, which meant the water sat for a longer period of time and not used by occupants of the building. So I would say that other than that particular trend, that's all we've really seen by way of a pattern as far as that goes. And we have had a lot of work, as you know, with the volume of dollars available in some of the categories. We've been doing a lot of larger projects on a lot of schools. So I think that contributed to that particular impact issue. The way the sampling is actually done, we use a third-party consultant to do, or a testing sampling company, who then send the results off to a independent lab. The samples have to be taken after the water has sat for a 5 to 6 hour period at minimum. They can only be taken between May and October, so there is a window in which we get to do that. And that has led to, with the additional tests we're doing, more activity taking place during a shorter space of time. So they have ramped up accordingly and done a very good job of responding to that and getting the results done. The sampling is then done by the lab, and results are issued to both a number of actual places, actually ourselves, the health department, and the ministry as well, all get an exceedance if it's reported. When an exceedance is experienced, whether it's a flushing or standing, there's a slightly different approach. The standing one, we then move on to the flushing and determine how long the water has to be flushed to get to a clear result. So you could see multiple what are classified as an exceedance when we flush it for 3 minutes and don't get it clear, and flush it for 5 and then do. So you'll do multiple tests or multiple durations in time to eventually get to the minimum time of the flushing. Because on the other side of this issue, we're concerned about the volume of water. There's a significant amount of water being discharged every day as a result of the flushing that occurs. So we could overdo the flushing time to be, extra cautious, but now we're on the side of literally wasting perfectly good water in some cases. So we're concerned about that as well. So working up to that in a gradual fashion means we could get multiple exceedances until we get to the actual duration necessary to get a clear flush. And then the health department is notified, as is the MOE, that we have to have 2 successive clear tests before that can be put back into use. And to your other question, what happens? We would immediately take that fixture that's been determined to have an exceedance out of operation. Typically, we're finding it's 1 or 2 locations in a school. It's not the entire school. So we'll take those out. In most cases, we don't have to do anything other than take them out. The school has other options for available drinking water. If it's a school that has a limited number of points where students can access drinking water, we would provide another drinking source, either bottled or jugs of distributed water throughout the school during that period till we can get back to the clear testing and put the system back in operation.
Thank you very much.
Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. Firstly, have all of the exceedances identified in the report been mitigated at this point in time? And then secondly, I think that the link in the report to the 25-page full water testing is not directing to that particular report. So,
in answer to your first question, they all have been mitigated, resolved in one fashion or another. And I know we heard word that the link was not working earlier, but I thought that had been remedied. The comment did come up earlier, and then a subsequent one indicated that it was working. So I'm not aware that it's not. Okay.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
look into that. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further speakers, thank you very much, Superintendent Cullen. All right. So all those in favor of the minutes from October the 18th? And receiving the consent agenda. Well, it's the consent agenda items, yes. And receipt of. Trustee Gerbens? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now up to approval of business transacted in private session, and I believe there's one item.
There is one item, and it's regarding a property matter, and I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Gerbens. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Vice Chair Graves and Trustee Gerbens. Next. Where's the private session? know, you have the technology. We're taking a break for station identification. You're watching the Halton District School Board public meeting of November the 1st, 2017. All right, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving right along, we have no action items for tonight. So, as we have regrets from our student trustees, did their student trustee mentors have any updates that they forwarded along or anything? No? All right, because I know that their report is coming for the Trustee Daniele, did you have anything from the student trustees?
You forgot for action first, yeah,
Where?
because you were doing trustee reports.
Oh,
We'll have to wait for these.
You've got the, you have this here. You don't have the right one.
okay, so I didn't get an update. All right,
Okay.
I'll have to, I didn't get that on mine. I must have got a, well, I guess I didn't pay attention. I'm sorry. Okay, I guess Trustee Daniele has nothing because I haven't heard her chime in. So I know that their action item on their voting process will be coming to our meeting next meeting.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Before the computer wasn't working on mute, but the phone was. I apologize. No, I have nothing. I've been hitting the wrong button. I apologize.
Thank you, Trustee Daniele. Okay, my apologies. My copy of the agenda didn't have the updated version, so we're going back a step, the action items for November the 1st. So we have a recommendation regarding the Special Advisory Committee representative change for Autism Ontario. Could Superintendent Zonnefeld please come forward? Thank you, and when you're ready.
Good evening. Through the chair to trustees, at various times we've had changes in our membership for SEAC, and tonight is another one of those times. So you can see a report before you regarding a request from Autism Ontario Halton Chapter appointing a new alternate rep for their organization at the SEAC table. So it's a fairly straightforward transition, and this is here for your approval. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. For us to vote on this in time for the member to be able to come to the next meeting, we need to waive the rules this evening, and I would like to move that we waive those rules.
Okay, moved by Trustee Collard to waive the rules, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Any discussion on waiving the rules? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously, so I will put the motion on the floor. Be resolved, the Halton District School Board approve the recommended appointment of Lisa Cameron as a Halton District School Board SEAC alternate for Autism Ontario Halton. Moved by Vice Chair Graves, seconded by Trustee Collard. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Superintendent Zonnefeld. Appreciate your report. Okay. Thank you. And seeing as you're going to stay in that chair for a minute, we'll move to the action items for November the 15th now. The Community Pathways Program Outdoor Learning Spaces, Report 17119 on page 16 of your board package. Superintendent Sonnenfeld.
Thank you. Through the chair to trustees, I think all of you are familiar with our full-day kindergarten outdoor learning spaces, which we were really pleased to move ahead with that initiative during our implementation of full-day kindergarten. They've been really successful in supporting that program and bringing the program outside, which we think is a really healthy element of that program. So in recognition of that, and as we've been looking more and more closely at the community pathways programs in our high schools, we've seen a lot of benefit of that same kind of learning opportunity for students in those programs, because in elementary school, those same students are using those FDK spaces in those elementary schools. So when they're doing that all the way up to grade 8, why not have that same opportunity in come grade 9? Because we know those students benefit from that. So there's an opportunity with some of our funding that was still available after doing all of the FDK implementation. Some of the budget that was set aside wasn't all utilized. And we see the opportunity to now use those funds to continue that same outdoor learning space creation for our CPP students. So the report before you gives a bit more detail of that and identifies that these funds are available in accumulated surplus. And so what's come to you tonight is simply a redesignation of those funds that we're going to be using them instead to create those outdoor learning spaces for our CPP programs. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any comments or questions for Superintendent Sonnenfeld? I think this sounds like a really exciting project, and I think it'll be a great benefit to our students. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I have two questions, if I may. In recent visits to schools, it's been brought to my attention that in some cases there has been a lack of shade areas. And I know in some of our new builds, I'm thinking of my visit to Martin Street, I like to see the canopy that was installed, but then at the same point, in other schools that I've been, there's been, for example, up in the hills, a massive removal of elm trees, therefore eliminating the shade that existed at some of those schools. What do we do as a board when the city comes in and removes the trees, and therefore it reduces the shade for students? It also has resulted in some cases at schools in creating erosion because the tree isn't there to use the land properly. Do we have a plan for that? Is this also incorporated in some of our school ground greening? I did note that there is a.
I'm not sure what this has to do with this motion regarding the outdoor learning spaces.
Pardon me, I'll rescind my comments for later. I think I'm in another part of the report.
Okay.
Earlier tonight. Sorry.
I actually think you're in the greening report,
Yes,
which was not pulled out of the consent.
Yes,
consent.
I am.
So
my apologies.
So I might suggest in trustee questions and answers, you can ask that, and Superintendent Cullen will be able to answer that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Gray. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Sonnenfeld. So I think this is a great idea. I just want to make sure that the FDK spaces that the money is supposedly surplus from doesn't need it. Because I know, for instance, one of the schools that was, year one kind of maybe sort of is kind of caught up, but is it caught up to the same as year 5 got? Or is it caught up to what year 2 got? So the question is, it says we have 400,000, but does that mean we have all our FDK classes have everything that they need, or maybe even want, to make sure before we reallocate a budget? But I also have another, I guess I'll go on at the end of the list too.
I'll answer that. Through the chair to Trustee Harvey Hope. Yeah, quickly, yes. All of our kindergarten playgrounds are done to a very similar standard. Not that they're the same, but in terms of a funding principle, very similar. We went back to year 1 and 2 sites and did some enhancements. We also learned along the way. So having done all that, we're still left with the surplus. The FDK, they're not perfect, but schools do have the opportunity to top up. And so that's why you can notice some real differences from school to school. So some school councils came in and added, upwards of $20,000 or $30,000 to really enhance it, while some schools just chose to stay with the flat. We gave schools about $25,000, 20 to 25 across the board. Went to some of our communities with less ability to raise funds and even enhanced that a little bit, and then also looped back to year 1 and 2. And having done all of that, we're still faced with this, I think, is a nice opportunity to enhance our CPP.
Go ahead.
With all due respect to Trustee Gray's greening question later, I guess the follow-up to that would be, do any of those kindergarten spaces then now need a shade structure? But I'll just let that hang. But that was the comment that until you went off into greening, I thought we were in kindergarten shade. Did we have any more kindergarten shade issues? But if you're thinking that they all have the same amount level, most of that standard thing had at least one blue shade sail thing in it, or something along those lines was sort of part of the standard.
Is that just a comment?
Well, I guess the question would be, so is shade part of the standard outdoor FDK experience?
Yeah, through the chair to Trustee Harvey Hope, it is certainly a factor. It wasn't, when the Evergreen Canada consultant came in, it's certainly right up their alley and a priority. I wouldn't say there was a standard school to school based on that, so you wouldn't see there's natural shade in many of the areas. I couldn't comment on any specific sites really lacking, but I know that was a focus of them. Some of the last schools we looped back to, it was shade sales to address that.
Thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This looks like a really great opportunity for the students who would be recipients of this type of facility. By my calculation, it's roughly $65,000 for each of the CPP schools. And I think that, we can get some great insights from staff expertise and also our community partners that sit on SEAC. I'm also thinking, Superintendent Podreberic just mentioned an organization that came in and offered advice on trees. And there may be other kind of innovative things floating around out there too, that it would be $67,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but hopefully we can stretch it as much as possible to do some great things for these kids.
Through the chair, absolutely. We were, I was involved directly in a lot of that design work and the initial rollout. We did the outdoor spaces for FDK. We drew on a lot of expertise, as you've described. So we'll be doing a similar approach here, and also a bit of a phased approach. I think the rollout of FDK didn't come fast enough. I know from a community standpoint, they would, many neighborhoods and schools would like to see it come sooner. But from a implementation standpoint as an organization, it was really helpful for us in terms of learning as we went, right? We got better and better at it as we went along. And so I think a bit of that model would apply well here, that we're not going to go and do all of our CPP sites at the same time. We'll decide where to start and learn as we go. I'm not saying it's going to take us, one site at a time over the years, but I think it would be wise for us to do this in a few sites, see how it works, learn from what really benefits students well. Even think about things like vandalism and that kind of thing. How do we sort of make sure all that is done well, and then to continue to apply our learning as we move ahead. So we'll look at that with our transition. When we think about our Nelson work that's coming, about the work that's happening at MMR very soon, and other opportunities where we can roll this out and draw on those resources, I think they'll serve us well. And based on the amount of money we needed for the FDK spaces, that 65,000 should serve us quite well in creating some great spaces.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just a quick follow-up. Thank you. The other group, I guess, that I didn't mention earlier was just about students and student voice. And I know I was fortunate to work on a project with TTC around accessibility of some of their new vehicles. And one of the critical success factors was to have people from the blind community, people who were use different mobility devices to come in and kind of touch and feel what was going on to make sure that it worked for them. So in that same regard, the students that are going to be using this, I think, would offer a great resource and insight too.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Their input will be critical as well.
Thank you. Vice Chair Graves.
Thank you, through you, Chair. My question was just, is the intention to have this at every single school that has a community pathways program? And if the answer is yes, then sort of two follow-up things. One is there space at each site that's easily accessible? And also then there might be a small semantic change I might make to the motion or suggest for the motion. Thanks.
Through the chair, yes, at all of our high schools with a CPP for sure. And the space and the where, that will be very specific to each site. We learned that through the FDK work that we couldn't just automatically say, yes, it'll be on this same spot on each building. Every site's unique, and therefore we'll have to take that approach site by site to look at the best location and design, considering factors like access from the school, proximity within the rest of the building and the site, appropriate design elements, security, all of those things will be considerations that will go into that.
Ahead.
So then my follow-up, it sounds wonderful. I'm fully supportive. I think this is fantastic. Then the suggestion I might make for the recommendation is instead of saying at high schools with community pathways programs, because it doesn't necessarily speak to we're going to do that at every single one. It just could be a few of them. That say that at high schools with community pathways programs? Yes, but it's not saying all. So I'd be more comfortable if there's at each high school that has a CPP or at all high schools with community pathways, just to make it clear, so it's a little bit less ambiguous. Thanks.
That's a friendly amendment. It's not on the floor. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. I support this and delighted to hear this news. I'm just wondering if you could give trustees a snapshot of what kind of design elements would you be looking at, or perhaps at some point can you come back to us and share what because we certainly have seen the FDK play areas, but would love to know what plans you have.
I can say initially, because once this is some new area for us, so it'll be certainly some excitement of information we can draw from other areas and some learning, but for sure opportunities for the students to be active. So you think about what that space might look like. Be a combination of hard and soft surfaces because they, benefit from both. A number of our students really benefit from a variety of tactile and sensory opportunities. So there are lots of ways to incorporate that in an outdoor setting. For our students to be active in a number of ways. So that can be fine motor, gross motor. Some of those require a large amount of spaces to do that, some within a very confined space. So if you think about some of the needs of some of those students. That just a real range of what that can look like. But certainly we can come back here with some of the designs in the future to show you what they're going to look like, because there certainly be some exciting spaces that we come up with.
Thank you, Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I have a suggestion that since this reallocates accumulated surplus, and we're about to issue financial statements that would then need to have a line changed, if I wondered whether there was any appetite for waiving the rules in order that on the day the financial statements come to the board, they would be in this particular surplus would be under the right line at the time. It's not critical in that we don't actually vote on the financial statements until the second meeting, but it would mean that everything needs to get changed.
Are you making a motion to waive the rules?
Sure.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Collard. So is there any discussion on waiving the rules? Vice Chair Graves.
So my question first is, has this been to SEAC? And if not, then I wouldn't vote to waive the rules this evening. I'd like to receive their input. Well, I'm sure they'd be interested. They might have something to contribute to the report or the motion or some other reflection.
Through the chair, no, it's on the agenda for next week. So in terms of order, I guess if it was, I'm cautious to bring things to SEAC where I know that their input is such that they may change, provide great insights that might change, direction that happens at the board table. This is simply a reallocation of accumulated surplus. There's nothing happening tonight, obviously, in terms of design or any of those other elements. So that's the work that we're excited to have SEAC's input on. So it hasn't gone to them yet, but certainly it's up to trustees whether or not you want to have that, the sequence of that decision.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Yes, I agree with Vice Chair Graves's analysis of the order and the sequence in which we ought to be doing things, and SEAC ought to be consulted prior to us passing this. So if I could, I would like to withdraw seconding the motion to waive the rules, because I will not support waiving the rules.
I have a different.
I'm not sure you can withdraw the seconding because we're already on the discussion for waiving the rules. So we're actually having a discussion on waiving the rules first. Trustee Gerbentz.
Thank you, Chair Amos. I'm cautious when we're dealing with funds and that we're not allowing for that time to get any input from the public before passing them. Even though I am actually all for this, it's just, I think that there should be the opportunity to get some feedback if necessary.
From the public, whether they support it or not. And that's all SEAC will be able to say, is whether they support the fact that we want to do this or not, right? Because it's not about the design, it's about whether we have the programs.
Can I just ask a clarification?
Go ahead.
Through your chair, Amos, I just have a clarification question for Trustee Gerbentz. When you said from the public, are you just referring to the 2 week of the waiving the rule or actually going out to see? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I believe Superintendent Veerman has a comment. I just wanted to suggest that it's a part of the surplus. It's not new money. It's just so that, anyway, but I'll let Superintendent Veerman answer me first.
Superintendent Veerman.
Through the chair, the comment was initially brought up with respect to financial statements. So under Note 11, which is a summary of the accumulated surplus, this money falls under other operating with a number of other items within that category. So on the financial statements, there'd be no visible reallocation within that line.
Is this a follow-up?
Yeah, well, clarification to Superintendent Veerman, but it does actually get, not in the financial statements themselves, but in the report of the accumulated surplus that comes, I believe it's separated out. Anyway, if Superintendent Veerman doesn't mind changing a line later, if it then I'll withdraw. I would suggest that perhaps this motion comes sooner on the agenda on the 15th than the financial statements. So perhaps I could at least get this motion moved up on that night.
Okay, so we're now voting on whether we're going to waive the rules.
Well then, if nobody seems to want to do it, I can withdraw.
We can just defeat it. Okay, all those in favor of waiving the rules to deal with this tonight? Nope. Trustee Reynolds and Mel Harrison. Oh, so that's defeated. It will come back in 2 weeks.
Even the person that put it on board.
But there are 2 yes votes, so it has to be recorded that way. I've got it.
Thank you. All right. So thank you very much for your report, and we'll see it again in 2 weeks. The next item is item 5.2.2, Trustee Professional Development, Report 17124. Trustee Collard on page 17 of your board package. Trustee Collard.
Thank you very much. This is an annual report that comes before us every year regarding professional development for trustees, and it's very similar to reports in previous years. I did just get an email today regarding finalizing the agenda for PEZ. It's going to be jam-packed. It's going to be a really incredible PEZ this year. They're having equity and inclusion. They're having the 15-minute sessions that are all linked to mental health, equity and inclusion, and well-being. The main symposium will have the Minister of Education and the Minister of Child and Youth Services in attendance, and they will be discussing their joint efforts and how they will be working together cooperatively. There will be a labor relations update. There's going to be student session, and the minister has once again this year offered to pay for student trustees to attend that session. There's going to be information on freedom of information, and there's going to be a presentation from the City of Kingston on their busing program that they've got in place there, which I know we've been looking at here as well. So I hope that you will all be able to come for at least part of the PEZ, and the report is in front of you for vote in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, this will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you. All right. So we're now up to notices of motion. Do we have any notices of motion tonight? Seeing none, we're up to the director's report. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos. I have 3 items this evening. The first one is from Superintendent Etoff around Indigenous flags.
So this is an update that we have met with the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, and are certainly working through that process, and we'll have something shortly to bring forward to the board. In the meantime, we wanted to let you know that next week is Treaties Week. And so as a result of that, we are going to be flying here at the board office the Mississaugas of the New Credit flag from Monday to Thursday. We'll be taking it down Friday morning in anticipation of Remembrance Day, and that many of our schools across the system, because Remembrance Day falls on the Saturday, will likely be doing their ceremonies and so forth during the Friday. And so as a result, we will be asking all schools, and we're sending a communication out to that effect, to lower their flags to half-mast on Friday, November the 10th. And we will keep the flags lowered throughout the course of the weekend, and then they'll be raised back up as of Monday morning.
Thank you. You have anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to, through you, Chair Amos, I'm going to turn to Superintendent Truffin. We had a very successful tech conference on Saturday.
Yeah, just very quickly, thank you, Director Miller. We had a really great day at our Innovation and Technology Symposium, our second annual one, which was great. We had over 250 educators, teachers, principals, system principals that came and had a great day of learning. So it was really successful, and a couple comments, great learning, but some of them saying that this is some of the best PD that they get throughout the year. You know, why leave the city? Why leave the town? Why go to summits when you can get that type of PD? It was for teachers, by teachers. It was a great day.
Any comments or questions on that? Seeing none.
And the last item is just for information for the trustees and the public. Myself and Superintendent Scott Podreback will not be at the next board meeting on November 15th. We have been invited to be speakers at the Association for Directors of Education in Scotland. So we will be in Glasgow at that time, and the AIDS or ADIS, the association in Scotland, is paying for, well, they've invited us and they're footing the bill. So we will be there for 3 or 4 days, and we will present. I'm the keynote speaker, and Superintendent Podreback will be doing a workshop and a presentation on our early years and FDK and how we got where we got. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions for the director on anything he's spoken to tonight? Seeing none, thank you very much for your report. We're up to communications from the chair. Last Friday, we were invited to a capital announcement up in Milton at Martin Street Public School, and by the Minister of Education and MPP and Naidu Harris. It was basically an announcement of the new school and the additions at Craig Kilburger and Alton Village. It wasn't the hoped for, anticipated potential capital announcement of funding for future schools, unfortunately. But when I was speaking to the Minister of Education, I did get an opportunity to ask, because I know she's formed a transportation committee to review what's going on with busing, and ask her what the process, and she's appointed 2 chairs, and they're going to be doing some public consultation and going out and reviewing what's going on. I mentioned to her that the fact that the minimum wage being raised to $15 is going to cause a real problem for the bus operators, because that's potentially now what they are being paid. So people may not want to drive a bus where they can go and get that kind of wage at another location. So she said she was aware of it and she would take note of that and take it back. I also advocated for our capital priorities for the North Oakville schools, and specifically the elementary, because she had recently been at Odenawi, and I reminded her of the visit, and I told her there was many more homes in that area already, and that we were reaching a crisis situation, and asked when the announcement might be, and she said soon, and I said, does that mean before Christmas? She said no, and I said, does that mean before spring? She says probably. So really didn't get any information, but tried to do our best to advocate for some of our priorities and some of the situations. So, and just wanted to remind everybody, tomorrow night is the Halton Learning Foundation Gala at the Oakville Center, and I hope everybody is going to be able to attend. And that's it for me. And we're now up to committee reports. Are there any committee reports tonight? Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Trustee Harvey Hope and I attended the first meeting of the Mental Health Steering Committee for this year under the leadership of Michelle Bates. The committee will be looking at forming a new vision for the mental health strategy for HDSB, looking at membership as well in terms of perhaps including other community partners and our own trustee, Metropolitansky, our student trustee, is interested in joining as well. And we'll be building a new 3-year strategic plan for the steering committee. And secondly, the Special Education Review Committee met last week as well. And we're looking at examining the current identification, referral, and placement pathways that are implemented by the HDSB for the provision of special education programs and services for elementary students with autism, learning disabilities, and giftedness. This will include some focus groups with staff looking at kind of doing an evaluation of the current strategies, and as well as reaching out to a number of school boards in Ontario to see what their pathways look like for their elementary students. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind trustees that the audit committee will be meeting next Tuesday, November 7th, private session starting at 2, public session at 3. And we look forward to the work of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Graves.
I think we had a boundary review committee meeting for the New Milton number 10 last Tuesday. So more an orientation meeting for our members. And next Tuesday, we will delve into the scenarios and continue the work from there. And also the French Advisory Committee is meeting on November 13th. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. I have 2 reports. The first one is for the Equity Inclusivity Committee. Trustee Grentz and I had attended the meeting under Mary Marshall, and we had were able to experience a virtual reality tour of the Highway of Tears project, which was a really exciting way to start our discussions. Our first meeting, we met our new membership. Really, our next meeting will be planning on what our collective work will be focusing on. The second report is for the Center for Skills Development and Training. Just, I'm not sure if trustees were aware that the Celebrating Success event is happening on November 16th from 4 to 6. And I'm not sure who's coming from the board, or if there's if the director's away, is somebody coming to support the center on that particular event? Yeah.
Director Bulk.
Thank you. And also this week there was a parent involvement committee meeting, and it was basically a debrief on the conference, and all the feedback from parents was looked at and taken into account, and people discussed about areas that were very strong and areas that may need some relooking at, and are already starting to plan the conference for next year. So it was a good meeting. All right, so we're now up to trustee questions and comments. Are there any trustee questions and comments tonight? Seeing none. Trustee Gray.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. And my apologies for maybe directing a question earlier tonight at the wrong time. But nevertheless, the information I think is important to our communities. And simply, it's the question perhaps directed to Mr. Cullen on the concept of shade being provided in our playgrounds and what happens when trees are cut down by the city because of the elm tree or the ash borer situation. And the second part of the question I had was that there's been a couple of schools I've been at recently where the playground equipment has been tagged as needing some further work before it's considered safe for use. And I'm wondering how soon that work can be planned, or what is the usual time frame for corrective work in those playground areas?
Through the chair to Trustee Gray and all trustees, the emerald ash borer tree issue has been a big one, and in a lot of cases it's actually us taking the trees down, so it's not just the municipalities around us. They obviously have park property, but we have a lot of inventory on our own sites and have been removing them. Our program, when we first initiated it, was really aimed at one of two things: try and save some of the trees. There is a relatively expensive cure, if you will, that may or may not work. So some trees were identified for that as an option, but I would have to say that the bulk of the trees were actually identified for removal. The program at the time did not call for the replacement. It was actually such a I'll say almost an urgent reaction to the volume that we had, and the funds required to look at the removal really limited our ability to come back and replant at that time. So we kind of left the replanting as a future plan, hopefully to address with schools and communities on a local basis. Do recognize, of course, that the shade on the school sites is definitely an advantage. In the play areas that we've been developing, Suzanne Burwell has been really working on a lot of different creative options to try and introduce shade where they can. Planting trees in those areas, initially trees were too small, it takes too long for them to grow, they weren't surviving, so she's really bumped up the standard and the size of the tree to try and get a really substantive tree in as many places as possible. And she's worked with a lot of the schools on their own greening initiatives in that regard, which seems to be working relatively well. And the alternate is some sort of structure. So either a trellis or the shade sails that some trustees may have seen around the school sites. Another creative way to introduce almost instant shade in some of the areas. So there have been a couple of different things tried around in an attempt to address that particular issue. The other one has been the actual reduction of asphalt surfaces in those play areas. So you'll recall at one point they were all pretty much asphalt. The heat retention and heat reflected back up off of those was considerable. So the greening, softening of some of those spaces, the wood chips and mulch that have been put in place have had an impact as well on that particular item. So I think that's our current plan as we see it right now. But I think our original intent with the emerald ash borer was removal first for safety reasons, and we'd leave the replacement issue as a subsequent plan.
Thank you. Trustee Grebenz.
Okay, got a couple of things. Tomorrow is the Gift of Giving Back that's happening at Robinson, so it's going to be inundated with all sorts of hockey players, and this year baseball players have been added, so it's going to be a madhouse there in the evening. And the other thing is that last week on the 25th, the Burlington trustees, along with Chair Amos and Director Miller, met with the Burlington City Council, including the mayor, city manager, and clerk's office to discuss mutual topics of interest. And it was quite a fruitful meeting, and there has been a task force that has been struck by the city, and they've asked us to represent. So Trustee Collard and myself will be representing on their municipal transit task force, and I understand that the Halton Catholic District School Board will also possibly have a representative, as well as staff from the city and the school board. So looking forward to being part of that. And the French board may also be part of that.
Thank you. And I believe it's Take Your Child to Work Day. And you didn't mention that maybe you brought your student to work day.
I did bring my daughter to work today. My day is long, so she is here.
And she's lucky she's at a meeting that's not too late. Welcome. Vice Chair Graves.
Thank you. The public might note that we're wearing some special pins this evening, and I wonder if we might give Superintendent Etoff an opportunity to explain them.
Yes, we are wearing some special poppies today. This time last year, I was given one of these at a conference from a colleague who works for the Rainbow District School Board, and so I took the opportunity this year to plan in advance and ensure that we all had an opportunity to wear them. They are sweetgrass poppies to acknowledge and recognize that Indigenous peoples in Canada also fought in various different wars on behalf of Canada. And the sweetgrass around the outside is, of course, it's a medicine used for purification and represents kindness. So I think it's very, very apropos that we can wear these at this time of the year, as well as our traditional poppies.
Thank you very much. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. Last week, I had the pleasure of attending Tecumseh Schools Council along with Trustee Pappen. I want to thank them both for inviting me to join them. That was a great opportunity to make the connection because, as we know, in September of 2018, the grade 8 Tecumseh students will be attending grade 9 at Burlington Central High School for the English and French immersion programming. So it was a nice opportunity to make the connection and to open up the family of schools, so to speak. But at that meeting, came out a question, and it was regarding a parent who had a child who was currently attending Tecumseh and wanted to know about their sibling. Other sibling is attending Nelson and wanted to know about optional attendance. So that question came up, and I was just hoping that perhaps for the public record, you could somebody could address the process.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Reynolds, the optional attendance process will be, they can utilize the optional attendance process, request optional attendance, and it'll be determined whether it's accepted or not. So just leave it at that.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to make mention that last week was a very special week in Halton Hills, and that the Wang Jiang Festival took place, involving more than 250 people having the chance to learn Szechuan cooking, traditional Chinese painting, calligraphy, and Chinese folklore dance. This all connects back to Ethel Gardner Public School, where Ethel Gardner is considered to be the sister school for the school that was visiting from Wangjiang, China. And Mr. Superintendent Scott Podger-Perrick and myself were part of a historic signing in the sister agreement that took place between the two principals, so that the two schools were now signed on as sister schools, and there are lots of plans for continued work with that school. They had 14 students visiting at the same time as many of their administrators, and it was very, very exciting for the town of Halton Hills, and we're hopeful that a return visit can happen in the near future of some of the students from Ethel Gardner to that school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And seeing no further speakers, I need a motion to rise into private. Correct? An adjournment? Okay, so we're going to have a motion to adjourn and potentially have a DPR if there's enough after. All right, all those in, Trustee L. Harrison, seconded by Trustee Gray. All those in favor? I'd like to note it's not even 10 to 9 yet. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and have a great evening, everyone.
I really don't care at this point. I don't know how to set up in my but I will check it for a number.
You